Okay, it's time to be true to my name and tell you the reason these people became extreme.
Somebody please give
Now I'm going to do something that's probably not all that accurate and assume that everyone here is not a narcissist. At least most of them aren't a narcissist. I'm just going to assume that, despite how accurate it might be, given the fact that they're just posting videos of them crying on the internet, not actually putting out any ideas. That'd be a different thing. But they're just wah, because they think that you need to hear their opinion no matter how little it's going to actually convey to you. Now, from what I've seen, these people aren't usually overwhelmingly pro-Kamala Harris. They're usually just extremely anti-Trump. And why is that? Well, because when Trump says this...
with his daughter, but his daughter is a very dumb individual, very dumb. She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face. You know, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy. But she's a stupid person. And I'd have meetings with a lot of people, and she always wanted to go to war with people. So whether it's her, whether it's Dick, I was surprised a little bit with Dick Cheney. I didn't know him at all. I only had essentially the 1 or 2 phone calls, and it was only a call saying, thank you very much for doing that for Scooter Libby. That was nice. And
seems fairly reasonable to me. She probably wouldn't be as much of a war hawk if someone, as Trump said, gave her a rifle and then she had to face down the enemy that she was so avidly supporting us go to war against. But the corporate press, however you want to call the mainstream media, published this. In context, what former President Donald Trump said about Liz Cheney facing a firing squad. Trump's comments about Liz Cheney and a firing squad drew the most public attention. Now, they did later say that, hey, people are taking it out of context, is what others are saying. But still, PolitiFact, you called it a firing squad. Fair, 9 barrels shooting at Cheney. That is correct. But reverting to violent rhetoric, Trump says war hawk Liz Cheney should be fired upon in escalation of violent rhetoric against his opponents. No, he did not say she should be fired upon. You just heard what he said, and we'll cover it afterwards. France 24, U.S. Republican Liz Cheney slams tyrant Trump after he suggests she face firing squad. After he said she was a war hawk and suggested she face a firing squad. And then in the also false statement, Trump talked shooting at press. Imagine former Republican Representative Liz Cheney facing a firing squad. Except that's not what Trump said at all. As you just heard, he said give her a rifle. Usually you don't give the subject of a firing squad a weapon as well. Also, 9 doesn't seem to be anything, specific to a firing squad. It's not like a tradition or whatever, from what I can tell. And usually a firing squad would aim at like a white paper cloth on someone's chest to destroy their heart instead of aiming at their face, I think to avoid gore or something, but they aim for the chest anyways. So again, that doesn't add up either. So there's no reason to believe that he meant anything along the lines of she should face a firing squad or be fired upon by Americans. Nothing that radical. He just merely meant that if she was a soldier fighting in the wars that she advocates for, she probably wouldn't be advocating for the wars. Okay, so they misrepresented what he said one time, but what about, some hard-hitting journalism, like something that they found and came up with and then presented to the American people, such as this. The Steele dossier explained. The unanswered question of our time, is Trump an agent of Russia? Trump-Russia Steele dossier analyst charged with lying to FBI. Key source for the infamous Trump-Russia dossier charged with lying to the FBI. Clinton's allies probe the FBI. Clinton's campaign funded the project, and we now know that much of the material in Steele's memos ended up being mere political gossip. FEC finds Hillary Clinton campaign and DNC over Trump-Russia dossier research. Oh, her campaign. How she funded it? Did she write that down under her campaign finances? Probably not. Oh, okay. Well, whatever. So it's safe to say that that wasn't true. But what about that whole thing in Charlottesville? What did Trump say about it again? We all must be united and condemn all that hate stands for. There is no place for this kind of violence in America. Let's come together as one. Okay, seems pretty good. And then the corporate press says that he didn't directly condemn white nationalists or whatever. Okay, so then, he got some criticism there. But then the corporate press said Trump condemned the clashes on many sides, quote unquote, in a Twitter post, and followed by said post that never actually mentioned many sides, but rather was just a unifying message against hate, which you see. But right after that, they say 2 days later, he specifically condemned white supremacy, but on Tuesday, he seemed to backtrack. But if I recall correctly, Tuesday, he had said this.
And you had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now,
treated unfairly, sir. I'm sorry. I just didn't understand what you were saying. You were saying the press has treated white nationalists unfairly? No, I just didn't understand what you were saying.
No. There were people in that rally, and I looked the night before. If you look, there were people protesting very quietly the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. I'm sure in that group there were some bad ones. The following day it looked like they had some rough, bad people, neo-Nazis, white nationalists, whatever you want to call them. But you had a lot of people in that group that were there to innocently protest and very legally protest because, I don't know if you know, they had a permit. The other group didn't have a permit. So I only tell you this, there are two sides to a story. I thought what took place was a horrible moment for our country, a horrible moment. But there are two sides to the country. Does anybody have a final? Does anybody have, you have an interest?
And of course, good old fake news or his opposition or whatever you want to call it, had this to say.
And that's when we heard the words of the President of the United States that stunned the world and shocked the conscience of this nation. He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides? With those words, the President of the United States assigned a moral equivalence between those spreading hate and those with the courage to stand against it.
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane.
And in that moment, I knew the threat to this nation was unlike any I had ever seen in my lifetime.
So Trump's reply was obviously,
to find people on both sides. What American president would ever say, Nazis coming out of fields, carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas, were fine people?
Both of you know that story has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on this. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. And you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that. And he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
And yet mainstream figures still say things like,
President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
not true.
It wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by. And this is a part of a pattern.
I mean, come on, man. But so let's just take like these few examples into consideration and realize that since most people read or watch the news and they don't find source original unedited clips, they get the sense that, Trump's this mega racist, misogynist, Hitler-esque, dictator. who's gonna do all this horrible stuff, like strip people of their rights, rule with an iron fist after overthrowing the government, and blah, 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 blah. You know, never give up power. And I'm not joking about the fact that they actually believe this. I mean, what they post on the internet, their own videos, prove that that's what they think. Now, I did want to show you guys something that I found kind of interesting and kind of nice, mostly. Just something that I found recently after the election that really warmed my heart and also was kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever. And you'll see what I mean, because I want you to notice the maturity of some, actually probably most of these people, but then the more like childish way that others in this clip exhibit. Now, I'm not going to show all of it because it is a long clip. If you want, like, you go look it up. Not super hard to find. It was like the day after the election, so November 6th. But here, just take a listen. It will be a little bit longer, but check it out.
My takeaway is that the system works. We live in a democracy. People spoke. This is what people wanted. I vehemently disagree with the decision that Americans made, but I feel very, very hopeful that we have a democratic system in this country. We should value it. We should love it. We should protest if the situation arises that we need to protest, which I'm sure it will. And I've been through this before with Nixon. It's been very difficult, but boy, oh boy, do we have a country if we can keep it.
Yeah. Well, echoing the sentiments, Joy, one of the first things I wanted to say for anyone that needs an example of when the person you voted for does not win, you do not say the system must be broken or that it was rigged. You say it is what it is, and you show up anyway. And I want to commend all those people that voted, because you sometimes hear people say, well, it didn't matter. No, it did matter. That was still your currency. That was still your power. And people turned out. Now, if you didn't vote, you really don't have a say in the conversation, so you can go ahead and sit down. But for the rest of you, and then a lot of what I think about is what I always tell my kids when things go on. You feel what you feel. Everyone has different emotions. Some people got what they wanted. A lot of people didn't. And you feel anything that comes up, and then you turn around and you say, let's look at the tapes. Let's see what we did. Let's see how we continue to fight for the people that we care about. And you take one step in front of the other. And so here we are today, and I still feel that optimistic because I feel arm in arm with so many people who agree with me, and I'm not going to stop marching. So
I like this pep talk, Coach Haynes. Listen, is it the outcome I wanted? No, but we live in a democracy. I have my vote. Right. Millions of people cast their votes did. And what's important to me is this. Tens of millions of Americans, our friends, our neighbors, our family members, voted for Donald Trump. We disagree with him. I know we all do at this table, but they are good, decent people who are patriots and love this country. And I can't speak to what drove them to the conclusion of being with him, but I think it is a moment for us to listen to each other, to hear each other, express what our concerns are. I've spent the last 4 years doing that, and also listen to people who are with him, because this is a country that there is truly more that unites us than divides us. I know it doesn't feel like that for many people in this moment, but we need to bring down the temperature, the name calling, the demonizing. I think we forget about rural America. I think the working class feels left behind. They feel like the powerful, the elite only care about them and their power. And he spoke to them. We may not have liked his words, but they turned out for him. I mean, the map was, it was beyond Reagan what we saw last night. And I think we need to start listening more about the concerns of everyday Americans who feel like this system is failing.
When Reagan won, I remember the whole map was red.
Yeah. It was pretty red last night.
I don't know. I'm profoundly disturbed. I think if you look at the New York Times this morning, the headline was America makes a perilous choice. I think that in 2016, we didn't know what we would get from a Trump administration, but we know now. And we know now that he will have almost unfettered power. What? And so I worry, not about myself, actually. I don't worry about my station in life. I worry about the working class. I worry about my mother, a retired teacher. I worry about our elderly and their Social Security and their Medicare. I worry about my children's future, especially my daughter, who now has less rights than I have. And I remember...
Keep in mind, she's bringing up a lot of worry, making people fear what's going to come from a Trump presidency. So she's spreading fear. Fear-mongering, the action of intentionally trying to make people afraid of something when this is not necessary or reasonable. Yeah, I'd say it falls under that. Why don't you finish this off with some identity politics, but let's move on because it's very long.
I think it has to do with a lot of things. There's a quote I get a lot of inspiration from, and it's a quote that I read when I was reading about John F. Kennedy. And it says, whether I am on the winning or the losing side is not the point with me. It is being on the side where my sympathies lie that matters. And that to me brought me a consolation and inspiration this morning, because I have no regrets. Yep. I worked hard as hell to elect the first Black Asian woman president. History slipped through our fingers again. I worked hard as hell for Donald Trump not to be president. But today, unlike Donald Trump and his followers, I acknowledge that he won. I hope for the best for our country. And I make a commitment to our LGBTQ, to our immigrants, to our elderly, to our young girls, to the women, that we will not stop fighting. We can be sad today. Today we can be sad. Tomorrow, we stand up and we continue. We have every right as Americans, because we love this country, because this is the most exceptional country in the world, we have the right and the duty to speak up and denounce abuses of power, to be vigilant. And so I invite all Americans to do it. But we are doing what they didn't do. We are recognizing they won. Yep. Now let's see what happens when he is governing.
And people didn't come out. I don't know why, and it doesn't even matter. He's now the president. I'm still not going to say his name. That's not going to change.
I have faith that some good, decent people are going to work for him. I've heard from some folks today. I think there's some reasons to be.
Anyways, Whoopi makes some good points, followed by a kind of rude comment, but whatever.
Public service in the country are going to go.
The thing that I wanted to finish up with is it's hard for some of us to hear that rhetoric after 50 years, after 70 years, to hear that rhetoric coming back, to hear things that came out of people's mouths that we all decided as a public group we weren't going to talk to each other that way.
Yeah.
So for me, when I hear that, I can...
So she doesn't say what rhetoric Trump is saying?
I feel okay when I'm pissed at somebody who's talking down to somebody else. I'm all right with that. What I'm not all right with is trying to further wreck the country. So that's why everything that everyone is saying at the table really comes down to, listen, we're still here. People, I would...
You know what gets me? The exit polls showed, according to our research department here at ABC News, the state of democracy was the top issue to voters overall. So that says that they voted for a guy who wanted to overthrow the election, who also said he would be a dictator on day one. And they also said that democracy was number one. So I'm concluding that maybe they don't believe him.
But I think, it means different things. I think democracy means different things to different people.
Well, when you're trying to overthrow a legitimate election and you say you're going to be a dictator, I don't know how you interpret that any other way, frankly. So I can only conclude that they don't believe he's going to do that. And I hope they're right. I hope that they are right.
So
good finishing off, but seriously, this is so easily disprovable if you actually watch the video. The word dictator on day one leaves his mouth. He's joking about being a dictator because everything he says he's going to do on day one, and only for day one as a dictator, is stuff that the president can already do. I'm not going to get into it right now, but she had such a good earlier statement, but that's less good and less wholesome. Anyway, back to the rest of the video. Now, is Trump a perfect person? No, of course not. All right, but neither am I, neither are you, neither is the person behind you.
There's always someone behind you.
The question is just how close. But just imagine now all the times that you've seen that Trump said something fairly reasonable, but then the corporate press just like totally misconstrues it, or at least partially misconstrues it in a way that has a very different effect on the idea that he was trying to convey. Now, I don't want to waste your time here, so if you want to see more examples of times that the media has lied about Trump, like verifiably so, then subscribe, ring the notification bell. I will be uploading more content in the hopefully near future. But otherwise, please keep an open mind. Treat others like human beings who just want to live a normal, calm, happy life, because chances are that's probably just all they are. So, peace.
There's always someone behind you.
I didn't do my hair at all. Whatever. Oh well. I just realized. Cool. Record time for a video.